motivation in real life. Welcome back to the Resilient Kid podcast with me, Ashley Costello, where we talk about how to raise confident, emotionally intelligent, and mentally healthy kids. How to stay grounded as adults while we do this. So in this episode of our motivational series, today we're going to bring it to life. So this is our last episode this year, actually. We're going to take a break on the podcast till January because we've got lots of exciting things to do. And we are working with a lot of schools. And some of the podcasts in January are going to be in schools. How exciting is that? So we're going to take some time out to record them while we do that work. So today, we're going to talk about motivation, what it really is. So in episode 1, we looked at what motivation is, the science, the brain, the why. Then last week, we looked at procrastination, what gets in our way, the small things, because I think a lot of people look at procrastination as a, laziness, but it isn't. It's definitely part of the process. And if we see it as resistance, if we reframe it as resistance, that really helps. So today we're going to look at motivation in real life. I'm going to give you real top tips on how it shifts for children, teens, and us as adults, how it plays out differently for neurodivergent minds as well, and how community and connection, which we know is the basis of resilience, can help us keep going when otherwise we'd probably give up. Because I think we think motivation is that willpower, it's a solo act, and actually it's not at all. It can be relational, it can be contagious, and sometimes just having the right person next to you changes everything. I think I told you last week that when I was writing the first book, we used to get on Zoom together, a group of us, and a couple of us used to go away for the weekend and write together. And we'd have breakfast together, but then we'd go off to our rooms, write, come back for lunch. Absolutely beautiful. I wouldn't have been able to write without it, for sure. So we're going to have a look at that. But what I'm going to do, first of all, is look at, in this part, motivation across the ages. So for kids, for teens, and then for us as adults. Because it does look different depending on our stage in life. So let's start off with children. For younger children, motivation is powered by play, curiosity, and connection. They're naturally wired to explore, to build, to test. You all know that famous question when they're little, why? So when we think about that with motivation, that will help us motivate them. When a kid says to you, I don't want to do it, it's often because the context doesn't feel engaging. It's not because they don't care. So let me give you an example. If you ask a child to practice handwriting by copying sentences, they might resist, because where is the motivation in that? But if you ask them to write a letter to their future self, to famous celebrity, a footballer, one of the Red Lions or Red Roses, or Father Christmas, then suddenly they're in. They're all in, okay? So for children, autonomy and fun are key. Now, teachers are usually really good at this. Sometimes what I find is in class, teachers are brilliant at this, but homework, they just want practice. But actually, it's us as parents that find that bit harder, because they get we get just just practice your handwriting. And actually, if we do it in context, if we get them to practice that letter, to practice their handwriting, that helps. So please, teachers that are listening, and I know there's quite a few teachers that listen to this, please give us projects, because that's much easier to motivate them to do. So what does that look like? For us as parents, how do we inspire that engagement? How do we inspire that motivation? So give them a choice. Do you want to use pen or pencil? Give them instant feedback. So look how neat that was. or look at the effort that you're putting into it, and then give them a little bit of connection as well. Like, I love to see how proud you are of doing that. So that's what we can do to kind of really spur on their motivation. What does it look like in teens? Well, teen motivation is shaped very differently. It's no longer around curiosity, but identity and belonging. The teenage brain undergoes huge rewiring. It starts to prune away stuff that we no longer need, and dopamine levels fluctuate. Risk-taking increases, and the need for peer connection just goes through the roof. So that's why a teen might pour endless amount of energy and effort into a video game or social media project, but not into revision. It's not defiance. It's not about not doing as they're told. It's wiring. It's a simple wiring, which they have no control of. So a teen who doesn't want to join like a school club might join if a friend invites them. And this is really funny because I am massive into getting kids into school clubs for a number of reasons, not just for life experience, but for friendships, for that belonging, that connection. Because when they're in clubs, they will often compare and contrast friendships in a club than they will in school. And it teaches them boundaries and it teaches them self-respect, because often in clubs, friends will be nicer, and whereas in school, sometimes we put up with stuff from friends that we won't do. So that's why I really like getting them involved in a young age. Now with teens, if they're not already involved, kind of by the time you get to year 8, 9, clubs start to drop off if they're not already involved. But if a friend invites them, then it suddenly becomes around, the motivation isn't around activity, but belonging, because that friend is going. So it's a really good little trick, I guess, as parents or as teacher, is to buddy up. I'm thinking about getting, Tim, I can't think of a name. It's really difficult as well not to use names of my clients. They're the names that pop into my head. So then I have to think of random names. Don't know anyone named Tim under the age of 50. But anyway, I'm thinking, as a parent, I'm thinking of getting Tim to join. What do you reckon? What do you think about Jenny coming too? And so as parents, you can almost, help that, because you're tapping into that sense of identity, that sense of belonging. So, because teens thrive when we meet them where they're at. Instead of going, you should care about this, I get that this feels pointless right now, but what does feel important to you? So, having that conversation, because sometimes, like even with revision, and we talked about that last week, didn't we? Doing the classwork, doing homework sometimes does seem pointless. Why am I doing algebra? But actually, if that's going to help you pass your exam, which is going to help you, go to the college that you want or get the job that you want, it's just a stepping stone. But it's clicking into that. So yeah, and having those conversations rather than just dishing out orders. Because I think sometimes, particularly if you're stressed as a parent, you're just like, just get it done. Like, but actually building that conversation with them, what about this feels important right now? And then what about us as adults? So by adulthood, motivation is often pulled in multiple directions. We kind of don't have time for the curiosity and that identity and belonging. We've often already gone through that phase. So because we've got responsibilities, we've got family, we've got finances, we've got work, and while we think that we should be self-motivated, the truth is we still need encouragement. We still need recognition and a sense of meaning. And I think, I work in a couple of big companies. And for me, that's what it's about. It is about that sense of meaning and also sense of recognition. I think sometimes the management, when I'm speaking to management team, yeah, but they've just got to get it done. Yeah, but we still need you to recognize that that job's been done because we're human beings. We like that reward. So an example might be you might feel completely unmotivated at work until someone says thank you. Like, but not just, oh, thanks for doing that. Actually, that's made a real difference. Thanks. I really appreciate it. Because that moment of being seen kind of kindles the energy for work. Our paycheck is not enough anymore. And what I'll say to you is, as human beings, irrespective of age, we all need to be seen and heard. For me, adult motivation is around purpose. And we talked a little bit about that last week, and progress. That feeling that your effort counts for something and that you're moving forward, even if it's small steps, we are moving forward. We're making that progress. So whether it's a parent juggling like 1,000 things or a professional trying to move away from that burnout that sometimes we feel, think about small steps, clear purpose, and a real connection. So if you are part of a team, that's how to motivate them. So I've purposely waited, although we have mentioned bits through episode 1 and episode 2, I've purposely waited to talk about neurodivergence and motivation here because I think it's really important that it has its own section. There's many of us who are neurodivergent, or that we might have, whether that's assessed or not, we might have neurodivergent traits. Now, motivation varies dependent on neurotypes. So for children and adults, those with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, there are others. They're the main ones that I'm going to cover today. Motivation is deeply influenced by how the brain processes interest, stimulation, and predictability. So let's start off with ADHD. ADHD brains don't respond predictably to importance. They respond to interest. So it's not about willpower, it's about dopamine, that reward chemical that we get. And it's really important if we think about the dopamine flow that we have. So tasks that are boring or repetitive for an ADHD brain can feel very overwhelming and almost physically painful to start. But when something sparks excitement or the focus becomes effortless, we call it hyperfocus. So let me give you an example. An ADHD teen who can't face maths homework because it's overwhelming, especially if, I know a lot of schools are using the platform Sparks Maths, and actually it's very clever what it does, but it is often set unrealistically levels by school. So you have to do this one before you can move on. So you have to get this question right, and that depletes motivation. That depletes our dopamine. So it feels very overwhelming before you've started because you know that if you get one wrong, you've just got to keep going until it's right. Now, not all schools set it at that, but some do. And that's, for me, kind of the wrong setting. Now, you know that your ADHD teen might spend hours building a gaming world, right? But the difference between them sitting down and doing the homework and that is that it's interest-driven dopamine. So what helps with motivation for our teens who might be displaying ADHD traits? Well, talked a little bit about it last week, body doubling, massive. Doing the task with somebody else. So whether they're, got their phone on FaceTime and doing the homework with a friend. I know my youngest does that for revision. Whether you're sat in the same room as them and you're doing something at the same time as them, or the siblings are doing the homework in the same room as well. Timers and gamification. So we talked about the Pomodoro technique, using the free app, the Pomodoro timer, turning it into a bit of a race or a challenge. Now, do be careful with this. That's got to be led by them. You can suggest it, but sometimes they get a little bit overwhelmed if they think about that. And then also external accountability. So telling them, them telling you, right, I'm going to get this done. So I often will say, my kids will go, how long is dinner? And I'll say, it'll be 25 minutes. What can you get done in that time? And, and these are really good for any kids, but particularly work well with ADHD kids. So I say, what can you get done? Right, I'll try and get my Spanish done before then. And they know they've got that timer. And sometimes it'll be like, I'll shout them for dinner. And they'll be like, 2 minutes, because they know in that 2 minutes they'll have it done. And then they're, okay, finished. So I hope that helps with, our kids that have got ADHD traits. Now, what does motivation look like if, say, we've got autistic kids and adults? Well, usually motivation then thrives on structure, clarity, and also personal meaning as well. If a task connects to like a special interest or follows like a predictable routine, then motivation is brilliant. It really helps, really flourishes in those situations. If it's vague or unpredictable, the brain can go into shutdown or resistance. So let me give you an example. A child might resist tidying up, right? So if you say, can you tidy your room? They might be like, no, it takes hours for them to get around to it. But they might saw Lego into colour-coded boxes for hours, right? The task hasn't changed, but the framing has. So they might have Lego all over their floor, and you say, can you tidy up? It's too overwhelming. Can you put all the red ones in this box, all the blue ones in that box? Okay. It's predictable, it's routine, and there is a reason for doing it because it's going to look aesthetically pleasing afterwards. So clear instructions first, next, then, yeah. And try and only give 3, by the way. Sometimes if you've got autism and ADHD, then very clear step-by-step instructions, but not too many. As a human, 3 steps is really good for us, that helps, but be careful not to overwhelm them. If they do have ADHD and autism, depending on your child or team, then maybe only do 1 or 2. You'll know them best. So yeah, clear instructions like do this first, do that second, do this third. Visual schedules, checklists really help. If they're younger, they can do like a visual timetable, like this is what we do on a Monday. Maybe they go to clubs or scouts, Tuesday. As they get older, they'll like timetables, they'll like to know, we just have family calendar, that kind of thing works perfectly. But also checklists, because they can see what's there, it's out of their head, they're not getting overwhelmed. And there's a physical checking off really helps as well. And then respect the deep interests as when they get that like, oh yeah, they love doing that, then think of that as a gateway to learning rather than a distraction from it. So what do I mean by that? Those special interests, those passions, like if a child or a young person is drawn to, when they're little, it's usually like dinosaurs, trains, Minecraft, animals, but that, and those can go into, adulthood as well, can't they? And they could last for years. But what they do is they bring comfort, they bring excitement and focus, like absolute focus. So the reason it works is because when we engage in something that fascinates us, it releases dopamine. And that chemical is like key for motivation, for focus and pleasure. So for any autistic children or kids with ADHD, dopamine levels can fluctuate. So if we can get them interested in something, that engagement is there, and then that leads to learning. So, for example, if you're trying to get a child that is little and you're getting them to try and learn to count, and they happen to be, or maybe you're getting them to learn the time, and they're really interested in trains, then use that theme. You know, if you're looking at geography, get them to look at geography by tracing, I don't know, train routes around the map. Excuse me. Practice writing by writing out, you know, train tickets or timetables or stations, things like that. A teen, you know, obsessed with gaming, use game design to explore like storytelling, coding, probability, you know, things like that. Is really helpful. And, you know, there is some education settings that do that, that will be based on the kids' interests. And, you know, I wish all schools were set up like that, because it'd be so much easier. It is hard work for a teacher, but once you've got those materials, once you've connected in with those kids, it's amazing, because when the child sees that what matters to them matters to you, it's a game changer. And it builds that sense of self-worth, the trust in the adults around them, but motivation as well. So yeah, that's kind of why we do that, and it is, you know, brilliant. So think about, if you're trying to get them to do something, think about trying to build it around an interest in, you know, build what you want them to do around their interest. You know, especially if it's like gaming, use it to your advantage. Why would you not? Okay, so what about, say, dyslexia? So for children or adults with dyslexia or dyspraxia, or sometimes maybe just processing differences, motivation often dips when tasks reinforce that failure. So like, well, let me tell you what's the antidote first, and then maybe I'll give you some examples. So if we can talk about strength-based approach rather than, you know, what they're struggling with. So focus on creativity, their problem solving, visual thinking, rather than repetitive stuff, rather than constantly correcting them. So a child who struggles with spelling might love dictating a story for you to write down, rather than them sat just writing words over and over and over. So for instance, if they've got 10 spellings to learn, can they put that in a story? But can they give it you, like verbally, you write down the story and then get them to do it? But it's sparking their imagination. It's sparking their creativity and where their strengths might lie. Because, you know, it stays motivation. You've got to kind of keep it alive, because success is possible then. Whereas if they're constantly coming up against the failure of can't getting that spelling right, then where's the motivation then? It's like banging your head against the wall. So yeah, really trying to spark their strengths and creativity and problem solving, rather than, you know, repetitive stuff. And as an education point for me, neurodivergent motivation isn't about forcing a system that doesn't fit. It's about designing the environment around that child, meeting them where they're at, and environments that work with the brain, with their strengths, not against it. You know, would be my first change in education, without a doubt. Okay, so I want to talk about the power of community and connection, because motivation doesn't happen in isolation. We often think of it as like this internal spark that is driven from within, but actually it's social. People around us can either drain us or ignite it in us. So think about the last time you started something new, a gym class, a course, a big project. The hardest part is if you have to start alone. But once you connect with others, like going to the gym with buddies, things like that, motivation will naturally grow. So a teen that joins a drama group might find confidence and keep going because of the friendship. a parent that starts walking regularly because they have, a neighbour or a friend join them. A colleague finishes a course because a friend checks in. How are you doing on that course? You've got that accountability buddy. Connection creates accountability and belonging. And they are two of the strongest motivators known in psychology. That's why we always say we don't need perfect self-discipline. We need community as a structure. If, for instance, gym's offered you and a buddy join together and you get it half price, it's a no-brainer. Now, I'm not saying to you that you would go to the gym 5 times a week if your friend's going, but you're more likely to go if your friend's going than if you just sign up on your own and end up not going and still paying the gym membership. Just saying. So how do we do this? Buddy up. Find a motivation partner, friend, co-worker, even your child. Doesn't matter. Share your progress. Tell somebody what you've done. Reinforces achievement. I do this a lot because when I'm writing like a new course or a new workbook, I will tell the hubby about it and I'll say, I wrote this course today, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure he's not really interested. He's interested because he's proud. He's interested because I'm his wife, because he loves me. Don't really give him a choice. He has to listen. But it's there. I'm really saying it out loud for me so that I carry on doing it. I'm saying it out loud because I want to be proud that I've done this work. And actually, sometimes it is like pulling teeth. Like if you've, when you've got loads of things to do, it's actually really difficult then sometimes to go, I need to set off on this. So having that, accountability is really, really good. So yeah, definitely share your progress. And then also join groups, whether it's, a parent group, whether it's a book club, an exercise group. Community sustains your effort that it takes to be in it. So if you want to read more, join a book club. If you come and join the village, that's why we have the village. We have the village because for me, it's really important that we, have each other's backs because parenting's the hardest job you'll do. So come in, have a moan there, ask questions there. Yeah, come and join the free Facebook village for sure. Even in families, connection fuels that motivation. A child is more likely to keep practicing their instrument if someone listens, if someone claps, says, I can hear how much you've improved since your last lesson, things like that. And then, okay, so I want to give you a real life story here. So I worked with a parent recently who was struggling to motivate their 10-year-old to read. Everything turned into a battle, right? And it was just one of the things they'd come to me with, but they happened to mention reading. And so I said, actually, let's have a look at that. So when we explored it, we realised that reading had become a bit of a pressure. And it's a pressure for us. When kids have homework, it's a pressure for us as parents. You've got to get that done. We feel stressed until it's done because we have that same pressure when we was a kid. We know what it feels like and we're just passing it on more often than not to them, right? And so we switched the focus from, instead of you have to read for 20 minutes, what they did is they created like a family reading time. So mum would say, right, okay, after dinner, I'm going to make everybody hot chocolate, everybody grab your books and just read for 20 minutes. And more often than not, they carried on reading. But as long as that the younger kid had got the reading in, perfect. Even if it was just for 10 minutes, it's that practicing that reading every single day. So, what they found is that within a week, it was the child reminding her to do, let's get our reading books. And that connection, that doing everything together, because often kids feel why am I doing homework? What are you doing? Now, we're probably just washing pots or, sweeping the floor or doing something like mundane, but they feel like they have to do it. The other thing as well that we did is on a Saturday, she bought the Beano. And like I use this to get my youngest son to read because he just didn't like it. eldest, she adored it. She adored reading, still reads now. Will avidly pick up a book, and once she gets a series, she will read the whole series till it's done. And then she might not read for a couple of months, but she loves reading. She just really enjoys it. Him didn't like it so much. So what we did was we picked up the Beano, and he just started to get into it because it was fun, because it was engaging, it was colourful, there was characters, it was short stories, and that really got him into reading, and that was a game changer for us. In that tipping point where they can nearly read but they're just not that interested, to actually they can read, and that was massive for us. And I'd also said that because it's not just about, yes, we make that connection, that family time for reading, but actually giving them the, let's go to shop, you go in and get it, loads of skills there, and actually that's their treat. There are other, there's the Beano, there's still the Dandy, which I think's amazing. I read them as kids. But that excitement of this is for you kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely. And if also what I would say to you is don't buy them both, get somebody else to buy the other one and get the kids to swap, because also there's another connection there, isn't there? So what's kind of the takeaways? So this is what I'd love for you to notice. Now, last week I said, what's one hard thing you've got to do? And did you do it? Now, I had to sit and write a pitch for a school. And what I mean by a pitch is we offer CPD. We offer group classes for kids. So like you'll have probably heard the coaches talk about transition and SATs prep. So we go in and teach year 6. We prep them for SATs and also transition to high school, which we absolutely love that. But also what we're doing is we do something in every year group, or small groups who are struggling, say, with friendships and things like that. And we offer parenting workshops. Now, we are launching next year the Resilient School, and we've got a couple. We won't offer it to every school. They have to align with us as our values, meeting the kids where they're at, wrapping them 360. And there are just some schools that don't, and that's okay, and we won't offer the Resilient Schools to them. But last week, I had to go in and write a pitch and get it done because we were having a big meeting with a school. And this school is just gorgeous. We love them. From the minute we walked in, we just knew that they aligned with us. And it takes a lot of effort and time because I research what I think they want and research them as a school and knowing their staff a little bit and things like that. And it was just one of the things, you just have to sit and get it done. And I was like, right, okay, what was my motivation for doing that? And actually, I'd wrote down the framework of what I wanted to put in. And I sat and thought, what's the why around this? And I thought, if I was to pick who was going to be the first Resilient School, who would I pick? And this school would definitely be it. And that was my why. And I thought, right, okay. And I got it done. So I know a couple of you emailed in to say that you had big stuff that you needed to get done, from cleaning out a closet to bathing the dog, which is brilliant. I hate bathing the dog, by the way. But yeah, so well done if you got that done this week. So this week, think about what motivates you right now. Is it interest? Is it belonging? That connection? Is it progress? Do you need to see progress? Or is it purpose, right? Who helps you as an adult keep going? Who could you invite into your circle or as an accountability buddy to strengthen that motivation? And if you're supporting a child or a teen, instead of saying, why are you not doing that? Ask, what would make this easier, or what would make this more enjoyable? Maybe it's a hot chocolate while they're doing it. I often, when my kids, I don't buy a huge amount of sweets, but when they're revising, I do. Listen, let's get you some sweets, get you some snacks, favourite snacks, smoothie, just to help them with their revision, because, it's hard sometimes to sit and get it done. But asking them, a question as simple as what will make this more enjoyable, and you will get there. Oh, nothing. Okay, well, let's try and brainstorm, whether that is, shall I make you a hot chocolate, whatever. But sometimes a simple question like that really helps unlock the door. So to finish, motivation isn't about that constant drive. It's about energy that ebbs and flows, right? And that is shaped by our brains. It's not shaped by us. It's shaped by our brains, our relationships, and the meaning, that purpose in what we do. So when we understand that, for all of us, we can ride those dips in it, all right, and start building environments that motivation can thrive in. Okay, so what I want to say to you is, any questions at all, come and join the free group, The Village, on a Saturday. We haven't done it for a couple of weeks because I've been away, but on a Saturday we have Ask Me Anything. So you come in and ask me about this. Come and ask me. I've got a specific question. It might be on trying to get kids to do homework, things like that. But come and ask me a specific question. Drop me an email or DM me on the socials and I will answer it live on a Saturday morning. This is the final episode of this year. So thank you very much for listening so far. I think we're on 90 odd episodes. I've got a feeling. I don't know if it's 96, 97, something like that. I'm kind of tempted to do 100 before we finish the year, but we will be doing that with the schools. So until then, don't forget, you don't have to do this alone. Motivation grows with connection, and connection is something that we can all create. So thanks for listening and take care. Lots of love until next year. Bye for now.